are in Shanghai with Gordon Gill of Smith Plus Gill from Chicago, one of the big super tall building workshops in the world today. Thanks for coming to see us here in Shanghai.
My pleasure.
What is the state of the art, and what is going through your mind as we sit here in September 2012? What are the headlines today?
Well, I think there are fantastic opportunities in our practice. The headlines are really opportunities in China and in Asia. There's a lot of interest for us in the Middle East. There are global issues that are concerning us that we're researching with respect to sustainable aspects of building and designing cities. So for us, those kind of principles and headlines are kind of driving what's at the forefront of our minds these days in terms of what we're designing. The economy is certainly of interest to us. Strategically, the environment that we work in is offering new opportunities around the world for our firm to practice in areas such as India, Africa, and so on. And we find those opportunities to be extremely interesting.
But even with all of the economic talk today, and there's no shortage of it, the interest level in super tall continues unabated.
It's incredible. One would think that you would see a dramatic decline in those requests or in those interests, but we have not. And I think that has a lot to do with the amazing growth that is happening around the world with respect to population, densification, and so on in major cities and countries. And I think that has a lot to do with their desire to create great places and have an identity on the world stage. And I think the super tall vernacular is part of that identity.
One of the main topics here at the Congress is how tall can we go? How tall should we go? And you have the biggest project, the tallest project out there right now in Kingdom Tower, which is, better than a kilometer tall?
Yeah.
Where is that project right now? What's the progress?
Well, we're just finishing up the design development phase of that project and moving into the construction document phase. I think the client and contractor are working feverishly to move the construction ahead. So we're very optimistic about where that building is headed and what's happening with that project.
There are a number of super tall, really super tall projects on your boards right now. Where do those stand? Just tell me some of the other projects you're working on.
Well, here in China, we have, in Wuhan, we have a tower that's over 600 meters for a Greenland development group. That's under construction. We actually had a great evening with that client last night, and they were talking to us about those opportunities that lie in the future. We have also won another competition with that client for a project in Chengdu for 450 meters, and that's about to start. We have a great pair of towers in Seoul, Korea, that we're still going into CDs on the exterior wall of that project. It's called Yongsan, Dancing Dragons. That was the name given to the client. The client gave the towers, I should say. And that is imminent in terms of its start date. So we have about, I want to say we have about four or five major super tall towers that are coming on the stage in the near future.
If you had to nominate spaces, spectacular spaces in buildings either existing or that are being planned or under construction, what are some of the examples you would cite?
Wow. Well, this particular building is near and dear to my heart. I think the Adrian and Jin Mao is a fantastic space and has been celebrated for a decade now. So that's really fantastic. I think there are some very interesting spaces in projects such as Burj Khalifa, not necessarily at the very, very top, but at the I think what was designed as the Majlis. There's a multi-story space in there that's kind of unique and very different. And not a lot of people have seen that.
And what level are we talking about for that?
I'm going to guess at about 140.
So above the observatory.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
it's right there. there's some new things that are happening with some of the projects that we're designing now, where the tops of these buildings are always heavily desired as a kind of celebratory event. And I don't mean that as an architectural, I mean spatially. So we have been called on for, almost every project that we have right now to design an absolute unique experience for the guests and the owners of buildings in those spaces. And in Seoul, there are 2 club spaces at the tops that are multi-level, where, in some cases you can look down through glass and see the ground plane, and, they're very, very dramatic. And I think at Wuhan here, the Greenland project has a fantastic 40-meter space at the top of the building that is of a scale, at a human scale, almost like a cathedral type of space. And there, I think that's just going to continue. I think it's going to continue.
That seems to be a coming discipline or a specialty in itself, because
it is.
Because really you're designing, you have to design something with a sense of place, really in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
And that's accomplished how? What elements go into making it truly unique?
Exactly. And now we're getting we're getting requests for those types of spaces where the revenue that's generated from these events at the tops of these buildings are tremendous. The observatory at Burj is very, very successful. And now the developers are learning that more and more, and so they're not just these spaces where you take the elevator up and kind of walk around and look at the rest of the city. They are an experience unto themselves.
What does the next phase of building transportation design look like?
Well, we're seeing, because of some of the fantastic heights that we're attaining with some of the projects, and the population that we just talked about moving to those heights in an efficient way, we're seeing opportunities for, certainly the double deck, tandem deck. We're seeing talk about triple decks, which has not been done commercially. We're seeing a lot of different challenges for us in terms of that experience again, as part of the event that occurs in the building. So the elevator cab itself, I think, is undergoing a tremendous amount of scrutiny with respect not just to things like safety and its kind of sustainable aspects, but also as a design environment. And we've been working on some cabs that are very, very unique in terms of the way that you move, the amount of time you spend, and what you're doing in the cab while you're waiting up to the 160th floor. And, I see a fantastic opportunity there for the elevator consultants and manufacturers.
Is one key to moving that along eliminating sky lobbies?
Well, certainly that is an aspect of the discussion. I think the challenge that we have, as I'm sure you know, is that the current technology associated with elevating with respect to the cable and being able to hoist the weight, 500 meters or 500 feet in the air, is a factor of the weight of the cable. It's not the cab. So the mechanism that's hoisting the car is itself the challenge, and how they solve that by either using carbon fiber to lighten up the weight so they can go farther distances or greater heights with the same amount of weight is on the board. Different kind of gearing systems so that the riders can be either smoother or faster but not uncomfortable. Those are all in play. We've seen some of those already come on board.
Well, Gordon Gill of Smith plus Gill, there's always something cooking in your shop. And we've gotten at least one headline out of Shanghai in the form of a building that you'll have coming in the United States that hopefully we'll learn about here soon. But thanks for dropping by to see us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.